wanted to build self-reliance. He wanted to make India self-reliant in the field of atomic science. So he had 3 stages of development of nuclear power and nuclear energy. Now, he wanted to indigenize everything. Today, unfortunately, India has fallen prey to American marketing effort of the American nuclear reactor supplier companies, Westinghouse, General Electric, and all that. And we have completely opened the floodgates to them. They've demanded recently, when Mr. Modi met Mr. Trump, I warned him, kindly don't dilute the nuclear liability law, because that will, nuclear liability law, if you dilute it, the reactor suppliers will not be responsible for any accident. We have to bear the responsibility. So if their reactors are defective, if their design is wrong, even then the entire liability devolves on India. So that is how American marketing power, even World Bank and ADB have announced, we are going to finance nuclear power plants. And India is going in for a large number of imported nuclear reactors, along with this imported fuel, uranium. And there are lobbies, monopolies in that. It is unfortunately very, very anti-national in my view, but still that is the kind of economic imperialism. If you come to telecom sector, even before Donald Trump came, India spread the red carpet, welcomed Elon Musk, and we are given the entire satellite spectrum to Elon Musk, Starlink. And Starlink operates in very close liaison with United States Army. They are in Pakistan, they're in Bangladesh, everywhere. They can switch off their spectrum connectivity anytime they want. They can blackmail. I wrote several letters to government saying, for heaven's sake, don't do that. They have relaxed security clauses in the case of Elon Musk. And when Jio and Airtel protested, they made them partners of Starlink. So they have literally created a cartel, and they control the entire thing, and consumers' interests are completely sacrificed. This is the kind of economic imperialism. Now, the other kinds of imperialism, say, for example, cultural. Cultural imperialism is, you don't have to go look very far. There is, in India today, we are talking of Hinduism, Akhanda Bharat, Hinduism. It's a kind of a cultural imperialism. They want to completely dominate with Hindutva thought and then marginalize all other religions, which is, I think, one kind of imperialism from within. Then there is a very powerful from within imperial war on the way we think. People think today. Your educational system, your ability to question. This is, in my view, it is the most important kind of a war that is taking place in India, and it is against Indian citizens. So I would like to actually deal with that to some extent. I think this is very, very important. Now, let me start with Hippocrates. He's a Greek philosopher of the 4th, 5th centuries BC, before Christ. He said a very interesting thing. He said there are 2 things, science and opinion. The former begets knowledge. Science begets knowledge. The later, there's opinion, breeds ignorance. This is what is happening today. We have more people giving us opinions. Sanatana Dharma is good, don't question. Something is good, don't question. History, I'll change it, don't question. And this is how we are promoting ignorance. I think this is where really a network of scientists like you should really unite and then promote rational thinking among people. Today, people are a prey or at the receiving end of this war. Now, George Orwell, he was born in India. He wrote that famous 1984 Animal Farm and some of those very powerful books in those days. He said, in a time of deceit, telling truth is a revolutionary act. Today, Stan Swami, who spoke for tribals, was in jail. He languished and died. Yesterday, Satyapal Malik, the governor who was removed on this day, on 5th, I think, say 5th or 6th of August from Jammu and Kashmir as governor, he died because the present government set the ED and CBI on him. They said he's corrupt and all that because he spoke out against BJP. Now, as I mentioned, Gandhiji always, used these 2 weapons, truth and non-violence. And today, if you speak the truth, they brand you as anti-national. And as I said, non-violence. Today, violence seems to be the main thing. Non-violence has become outdated. I think Mahatma Gandhi, if he talks of these things, probably, I won't be surprised if an FIR is filed against him. So that is the kind of a war that is taking place. Now, I think I've looked at people who call themselves Hindutva protagonists. Now, I looked at what they say. Now, obviously, many of these people, I had an opportunity to interact with them. Somehow we know they do not seem to know much about Hinduism because they have not read Upanishads, they have not read Bhagavad Gita. What do they say? What kind of thinking is embedded into Upanishads? These people do not know that Upanishads are question and answer logic sessions between the guru and the disciple. What the guru says, the disciple questions, and the guru tries to answer. Then the disciple again questions. That is logic. Now, according to these people, Sanatana Dharma, I'll give you 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If you don't do this, you're anti-national. Somebody, a politician in Tamil Nadu said, Sanatana Dharma is not good. They filed an FIR against him. I tried to say, what is Sanatana Dharma? Sanatana Dharma is an evolving thing. Over ages, it evolved. If you see Shankaracharya's, there is a Sanskrit movie shot by one of these Telugu producers. There, Shankara encounters questioning at every stage and to answer, he has to argue. He cannot just, say that, look, this is what I told you, you should accept. No, it cannot. It is not like that. Now, if you look at the Upanishads, I tried to look at the commentary on Upanishads by Shankaracharya. I downloaded that from Banaras University Library. It's a very interesting set of 8 Upanishads, important Upanishads. Katha Upanishad, Kino Upanishad, Prasna Upanishad. I tried to say what it is. It doesn't talk so much about God and all that. It doesn't talk about temples. It talks about questions. What is life? What is existence? Why this? This kind of logic is there. Now, this is the thing which I feel that today there's an onslaught on people who question. See, I as a physicist, as a nuclear physicist, I did my nuclear physics in master's, and I was in Tata Institute as a research scholar. I worked in Apsara reactor on a short-lived isotope. I published a paper. As a scientist, I'm reminded of one story. Einstein, he announced his theory of relativity. It was a very fundamental theory which shook the foundations of physics. He said time and space are interchangeable. If space gets curved, he propounded a new theory, a new model of geometry, space-time geometry. They call it Riemann geometry. And when Einstein also used tensor analysis in mathematics. So when he did all this, not many people understood some of his equations, some of his ideas. It was very difficult to understand how time can be a dimension, how space can be a dimension, how they can interchange, how time can get compressed, how space can get compressed. All these things are extremely difficult in those days. So he was an Austrian scientist, actually, originally. Then he moved to United States later. So he started giving lectures in Europe. So in wherever he went, the auditoriums used to be full, packed with people. Listening, they all wanted to listen to what Einstein would say. So I came across a particular speech, a presentation by Einstein in Belgium. I think it was Belgium. So there is an auditorium absolutely full. Now in the auditorium, who are the people who are sitting in the front seats? They're the same year professors. You see, India, we believe in hierarchy in every field, including science. Science also is subject to hierarchy. You cannot defy your senior, which I did, and I had to get out of Tata Institute because I questioned my guide, and then I realized that you cannot survive there because he indulged in plagiarism of my work. So what happened was when Einstein's auditorium, the front rows were all occupied by senior professors. The other middle rows were all occupied by not so seniors, but they're all faculty members, professors and all that. The last benches are occupied by young students who would be the future of the world. They were all in the back seats, last rows. So Einstein started making his presentation. So he was actually writing down his equations. First, he wrote one equation. And then he said, from this, it follows. He started writing a second equation. From this, it's obvious that he started writing the third equation. One youngster in one of the back rows, he got up. And he said, Professor Einstein, it's not so obvious. So when he said that, all the senior professors who were diligently taking down notes of what Einstein was saying, they look back, daggers drawn, and they're very, very upset. Who is this kid, young kid? He's disturbing Einstein. He's actually disrupting his line of thought. What is this? Who is he? He's an upstart, that kind of thing, They looked at him very angrily. But this youngster stood his ground. He just stood his ground. So Einstein, he looked at the board. He looked at what he wrote earlier, equations. He thought about it for about 3 or 4 minutes. Then he looked at the youngster and said, young man, you're absolutely correct. What you say is absolutely correct. Please forget whatever I've written in the first 3 equations. You're correct. So who was that youngster? He was Landau, a Russian scientist who got a Nobel Prize much later. So that means, basically, science cannot progress without questioning. See, Newton propounded a theory. People questioned Newton. And as people questioned Newton, then Einstein came. Einstein came out with his new ideas of relativity and all that. But Einstein's theory is based on deterministic logic. That means a particle. If you know the position and velocity of a particle, you can predict where it will go in the future. So you can actually trace the trajectory of all particles in the world strictly. That was Einstein's theory. Actually, Einstein normally would not talk of statistics, probabilities, and all that, except in one occasion, Bose, the Bengali scientist, is a great scientist. So when Bose contacted Einstein and Bose put together his theory, which is based on probabilities, Einstein reluctantly agreed. And he joined hands with Bose, and they came out with what is known as, very well known, Bose-Einstein statistics. But then the greatness of Bose is that today there are fundamental particles, a family known as bosons, that is named after Bose. And today people are struggling to understand the structure of bosons, fermions, and all that. Boson is a very, very fundamental particle. It helps the fundamental forces to work between particles. So this was Einstein. Now Einstein was questioned. He said, look, this is not so deterministic. It is not so certain. Heisenberg is a person who said, you cannot make an observation accurately. If you try to observe or measure the location of a particle, you'll go wrong on its velocity. If you try to measure the velocity accurately, then your location measurement is uncertain. So there is a total uncertainty in your observation and measurement. So he developed what is known as Heisenberg theory. Planck constant as they call it. There's Heisenberg's constant of uncertainty. And then people followed after that. And then they came out with quantum mechanics. Now, quantum mechanics is a particle is not a particle at one location, but it's a wave, probability wave. That means, if I'm talking here, my particle is not, I'm not here. My wave exists. My wave can go right up to America, right up to Russia. Only thing is the probability of finding me there is very low. The probability of finding me in Visakhapatnam is very high. So this is quantum theory. Quantum theory is all waves. And then they explain many things. Like, for example, in physics, there is what is known as diffraction, a double slit experiment, where light behaves like particles and particles behave like waves. The only way you can explain is the dual nature of light, both as particles and waves. That's how they did it. Now, later, other interesting things emerged from quantum mechanics. Quantum entanglement. So you're now talking of quantum computers and all that. Quantum entanglement means a particle here and a particle 100 miles away, they can interact in the universe. And if this particle changes its characteristics like spin, the other particle also changes. That is the kind of thing, this famous Bell theory and quantum entanglement. So these are all some things, sometimes, there is a very interesting book, Dancing of Woolly Masters, written by a science novelist. What he says is, ultimately, the so-called physics and philosophy seem to be converging at the boundaries. That is what is happening. And, when people, scientists like you, when you talk of rational thinking, sometimes I really wonder what this rational thinking is. All science is based on mathematics. Okay? Now, you say religion is based on faith. Faith is not rational. You cannot prove anything in faith. And how can religion be rational? So Einstein was very careful. He said religion and science are two different things. one cannot trespass into the other's domain. This is what Einstein said. So when you look at science, the so-called rationality, you try to go deep into that. Science is based on mathematics. What is mathematics based on? What is the foundation of mathematics? There are 5 postulates of Euclid, and there are 5 axioms. Axiom means you cannot prove it. Postulates means you cannot prove it. 5 postulates and 5 axioms. Axioms are for numbers, postulates are for geometry. The postulates are very simple. 2 points can be joined by a straight line. 2 parallel lines do not meet. Simple. But then the entire mathematics, rests on that foundation. Now, out of this came Riemann, a mathematician of great repute. And he said, look, why not I relax one of these postulates? Parallel lines may meet. And out of that came what is known as Riemann geometry, which is the basis for Einstein's special theory of relativity. Now, why I'm saying this is, these axioms and postulates are as unprovable as a religious faith. So if you say religion is irrational, strictly speaking, you should also say science also is irrational. That's what we are coming to today. Modern physics and modern theories of, Big Bang theory, universe, and all that. Ultimately, it looks as though that many things which cannot be proved. In mathematics, there is a very famous great mathematician of the stature of Einstein, Gödel. So Gödel said, you can never prove anything within a formal system. You cannot prove anything at all. So that Gödelian logic is not being applied to physics. And many, laws we are imagining may not really hold good. I say we are in a particular universe where we have all these rules we are propounding, and we are trying to explain things. But then that we are a part of it. We cannot prove it. This is the kind of thing that is emerging. So why I am saying all this is, unless science at every stage, questioning is there, it never advanced. Galileo, Newton, Einstein, quantum mechanics, further. Now, this is exactly what happens to religion. See, in religion, say about 1,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago, Hinduism, people questioned. Tarka means logic. When people questioned, religion evolved. See, in the Hindu religion, there is a lot of profound thought. It's not Ayodhyaram temple type of thing. It's something much more than that. What is existence? What is, what is a being? What is subject and what is object? Are they different? Are they one and the same? These are all, very, very important concepts in those days they used to debate. That's how Hinduism progressed. But the moment, you say Sanatana Dharma, a snapshot picture on a camera, and that is Hinduism and nothing more, the religion is dead. You're killing the religion. Now today, in politics, if you question, you will not get a ticket. As simple as that. So in politics, everybody becomes a slave. But, I still remember when Dr. Ambedkar gave the draft of the Constitution to the Constituent Assembly. He gave a brilliant speech. Only when I read it, I realized how erudite Dr. Ambedkar was. It's a fantastic lecture. I would very strongly recommend that everybody should read this. There, one particular para is very, very telling. He says, look, I don't know about this bhakti. Bhakti in religion may get you salvation. I'm not sure. It may get you salvation. But bhakti in politics is dangerous. If bhakti dominates in politics, there will be landslide victories. And once landslide victories take place, there will be dictatorship emerging out of that. And once dictatorship comes, it destroys all institutions. When these are Ambedkar's words, almost about 70 years ago, 1948 or so. And today, when you look at what is happening all around, I think Dr. Ambedkar was extraordinarily great. He also said something very interesting. He said, I don't know, we are giving this piece of paper called the Constitution to the Constituent Assembly. I'm not sure whether this paper is going to get us democracy. I'm not sure whether this piece of paper is going to get social justice, political justice, economic equality. Ultimately, a good man operating a bad constitution can do well. A bad man operating a good constitution may not, deliver. So these are the words of Dr. Ambedkar. So this is the kind of thing that's happening today. That's why I said there is an imperialism from within. And today, I'm really surprised. Many of my friends, many of my relatives, they're all, when I take a telephone, they say, Jai Shri Ram. What is this? I mean, I'm a Hindu. It doesn't mean that I have to wear the label of Hinduism on my shoulder and then be aggressive and then use it for hate speeches, spreading hate against other sections. I tried to file a case in one of the important courts in India against hate speeches delivered by our great leaders. They won't even look at it. They said, no, it's not admitted. That's the end of it. I mean, this is the kind of thing that's happening today. So I'm worried. You may talk about Ukraine. You may talk about Iran. These are all wars fought for minerals. They're all wars fought for territory. Between Cambodia and Vietnam, they're fighting for a place where there is a religious site. Incidentally, it's a Hindu religious site. But then much more long-lasting, damaging, irreparable is this kind of war, imperialism from within. Imperialism means, you try to dominate. Hindu Rashtra, Hindu this thing. That kind of thing is very, very dangerous. You see, India is a very, very harmonious society. I remember I go to slums and work. So there was a huge cyclone in Visakhapatnam. So I went to one slum and gave some help and all that. I tried to resolve their problems, food and whatnot. Then one particular slum, a remote slum, came and said, sir, why don't you visit our slum also? We would like to explain our problems to you. I said, yes, I'll come tomorrow. Hello? Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, please go on.
Yeah. So I went there and said that slum, local people said, sir, when you visit our slum, please visit our neighboring slum, which is a Muslim slum. I was surprised. I said, why are you saying that? Why should I? No, sir, when this cyclone hit our slum and all the rooftops went away and we were shelterless, the Muslim slum offered their dargah, their small masjid, as shelter for us. And then we all worked together. I was really surprised. I went and visited both the slums and I have been in touch with them. And the Muslim slum leader came and gave me a Quran, a very expensive Quran. So my wife was joking. If somebody finds a Quran in your hand today, you can be put in Tihar jail. That is the conditions in India today. That is the kind of thing that's happening. So this is something about which all of us should worry. And this is where I find that scientists, people who respect, there was a vice chancellor of a very well-known university who went to one of the science congresses. So there is a children's session of the Indian Science Congress. So there he was telling the children, no, STEM science and all that we knew, Kauravas were test tube babies. No, I was surprised, in a science congress, it never happened. And I remember Venki Ramakrishnan, who is got the Nobel Prize for chemistry, who is in England now. He attended one of those science congresses, said, I will never attend such a science congress. It's like a circus company. Now, that is what we are reducing them. I think this time they refused to hold the science congress because some scientists felt that this political interference, bringing Vedas and rockets and all that kind of thing, it completely, upsets your very approach to science. So I think that is where you, as a network, all of you and all of us, we must all join hands and we must question this. And then we have to go to people, popularize this. Mahatma Gandhi was a very great science communicator. He was a scientist. He was a great communicator. He summed up the entire climate science about 30, 40 years in advance. He said, our planet is enough for our need, not for our greed. In such simple terms, he conveyed a very powerful thought to the people. I think as scientists, we must adopt communication methods that will reach out to the people. And that is very important. We have got a number of people. We've got a very good organization which works. We all work together. Scientists for people. What they do is whenever there is an industry accident or pollution, they come out with a complete scientific analysis, very authentic scientific. They're all eminent scientists. And they issue statements, they fight cases, and they take up people's cause, people's health, people's safety. That is the kind of thing they're doing. So, but then we all have to network. Unless we network, we cannot be strong. I think that is something I think we should aim. I would very strongly appeal to you. I think this is a very important occasion when people like you can change the the situation, at least we can make a delta X, in mathematics, a delta X, small positive. That is enough. A delta X, a positive improvement is enough for us. Thank you very much, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Professor Sharma. So we can take the questions at the end. Is that okay? After the two speakers? Okay, great. In that case, thanks a lot for your very interesting and insightful talk. And I'm sure our audience will have a lot of questions to ask you. But we will first listen to our next speaker, and then we will open up for questions. So if you have questions, please hold on to them. We will come back to you, and we will take your questions after we have listened to both of you. Let me now welcome the next speaker of today's evening. We have with us Mr. Probir Purokayastho. Mr. Purokayastho was trained as an engineer at the universities of Calcutta and Allahabad, and he then joined the JNU, or the Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi, as a research scholar in the School of Computers and System Sciences in 1975. It was in JNU, after emergency was imposed by Indira Gandhi government, where he was arrested. And this was a mistaken arrest, because he was arrested in place of somebody called D.P. Tripathi. Interestingly, and of course, very, very unfortunately for him, in 2023, Mr. Purokayastho was again arrested by the Delhi Police Special Cell on 3rd October under the UAPA. He was accused this time of using Chinese funding to promote anti-national propaganda through digital media. The Supreme Court, however, ordered his release on May 15th, saying it felt no hesitation to declare the arrest and remand of the 74-year-old journalist under the UAPA by the Delhi police as invalid in the eyes of law. But what lies behind this man with these controversial prison innings is someone whose colleagues and friends describe him as a person committed to rationalism, scientific temper, and justice for the country's most oppressed people. Over to you, Mr. Purokayastho.
I'm not going to talk about my history, so I'm just going to talk about what you've asked me to speak on, which is today is what we call the Hiroshima Day, where we remember what happened in Hiroshima when the nuclear bomb was dropped on August 6th, and soon after, on August 9th, another nuclear bomb, atom bomb as we call it also, was dropped on Nagasaki. Now, these were weapons which the world had not seen before, but also for a long time, the Americans did not want the pictures, the destruction that it had caused, all of that to appear in public. So even the photographs that were taken by the Japanese or by American journalists were not allowed for about 20, 25 years to come out in public. So they knew after the bomb had been dropped that what horror it would create among the people, and therefore the attempt to also not make that public, to keep it as far as possible under the wraps, so to say. So people would think, oh, it's another big bomb. That's about it. Now, the pictures of the nuclear bomb, of course, are there, but there are also the children who saw the nuclear bomb. It was a trauma for them, obviously. So they drew pictures, they painted, they drew pictures, and those pictures also tell you the horror of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, probably more tellingly than even the photographs can. Again, you can all go and have a look at all of that. It's available now on the internet easily. But the point is that it brought, first time, mass killings at a scale which we had not seen before. Yes, machine guns can kill a lot of people. Poison gas can kill a lot of people, but poison gas got banned very quickly. In the Second World War, poison gas wasn't used. In fact, Churchill did want to use it against Germany till his generals told him, and the scientists told him, Germany actually has a better chemical industry than us. If we use chemical weapons, so can they. And therefore, it's better that we don't do this. So ultimately, Churchill decided, okay. But let's not forget, Churchill used chemical weapons against the Soviet Union very early on, and also in Iraq, for example. And he also wanted to use it in India. So these are, of course, horrors of a certain kind. But nevertheless, the nuclear bomb qualitatively changed the nature of war. Now, it's also true that post the war, Second World War, the scientific community came out in large numbers. The people who had actually wanted the bomb, believing that Hitler was on the way to make a nuclear bomb, they are the ones who then led the world, led the larger scientific community to question the need of a nuclear bomb and also declaring it a weapon of mass destruction which should never be used. Of course, they failed. Even now, there are at least 5 countries which are officially nuclear powers. Israel is an undeclared nuclear power, and Iran is on the verge of making a bomb. But as of now, we do not know whether they have or they do not have the bomb. But it has been true for a very long time that given the amount of fissile material that Iran has, if they wanted to make the bomb, they could have done it sometime past. The question for all of us is that nuclear bomb is not like any other bomb. If there is a nuclear exchange, as Einstein had said, that I cannot tell you what the next war will be fought with, but I can tell you what the one after that will be fought with, bows and arrows. So civilization will end. So nuclear bombs or nuclear weapons are therefore weapons of a kind which can destroy the basis of civilization, the basis of human life. And by what, again, the scientific community has said, that even a small number of nuclear bombs will create effects of a kind which will see probably the end of civilization, if not at least going back to dark ages pretty much quickly. So this is why we remember August 6th, not because we want to remember Hiroshima for the heck of it, but because it's really a change in human civilization where humanity has the ability to destroy itself. And I think that is a watershed moment for all of us to think that we now have reached a level where we can destroy not only ourselves, but all civilization. Probably much of animal life on this planet too. So that is why we remember today, Hiroshima Day, we remember because we would like the fight against the nuclear bomb to continue. It's also true that people have forgotten about Hiroshima and Nagasaki. In fact, for a long time, the United States did not want the pictures of Hiroshima, Nagasaki to come out. And there was an active act of censorship at a very wide level, that these pictures should not come into public view. But today, of course, these pictures are available, but unfortunately, we have somehow living with the nuclear bomb for now more than 70 years, 75 years. We have reached a level that we feel, okay, just another bomb. What can it do? It will survive. But the point is that, yes, few number of bombs are used, yes, will survive. Whoever is going to lose the nuclear war can very easily decide, okay, if we are going down, we'll take the world down with us. And that is the risk you carry that a nuclear exchange can never be controlled within set parameters. If it takes place, it most probably will finish civilization. By the way, these are war games that the US, at least we know, have conducted. And they found out in all the war games, it ends up by nuclear exchange. So it's not that they are not aware of the fact that any nuclear use of nuclear weapons will lead to nuclear exchange on both sides. Any use of nuclear exchange means civilization as we know it will end. But yet, even today, as we are talking, Mr. Trump, for example, has sent 2 nuclear submarines to Russia, towards Russia. Now, you do not really want to threaten another nuclear-armed country. Why do we do it? Why is Mr. Trump doing it? He believes that he can do it, but others can't. And that is really the threat, that it doesn't need more than one wrong man with the right button, so to say, the nuclear button, to end the world as we know it. One difference post-Second World War and today is that at that point of time, the scientific community acted as a conscience of humanity. It was Einstein, it was a number of others who came out. Bertrand Russell, the philosopher, who came out and said nuclear weapons are not going to work, are not weapons which can be used, and therefore the world should decide not to use them and should sign a treaty that nobody should build a nuclear weapon. The United States believed post-45, Hiroshima, Nagasaki, that the Soviet Union will take a long time to catch up. And therefore, they would have nuclear monopoly for at least next 10 to 15 years. Now, they underestimated that if a country wants to build a nuclear bomb, it was not going to be that difficult, because already the sheer fact that you built a nuclear bomb means that now you know that it can be done. And once in physics, you know something can be done, how to do it becomes a simpler problem. Now, therefore, and again, the Russians, Soviet Union had enough people inside the United States, even the nuclear program, also in Britain, in the nuclear program, to know broadly what exactly the Americans or the British were doing. And therefore, it wasn't that they were completely ignorant about how nuclear bombs could be made. But in any case, as we have seen, this is something which is, once you know it can be made, it's not something that difficult. Let's take not a country of India's size or China's size, which are big economies. Let's take a North Korea, which is a small country. Population, again, much, much smaller than India's or China's. But even they, when they wanted, they could make the nuclear bomb. And once you've got the ability to create fissile material in a nuclear reactor or in centrifuges, the ability to concentrate the nuclear materials, what is called the purifying the uranium that you have, concentrating it, then you know it's a matter of how many centrifuges you have, how many stages of centrifuging you want to do, and you will get above 90% purity of uranium or plutonium. And if you get that stage, 90% more or more, then you have reached the ability to build a nuclear weapon. So nuclear weapon building is not the major issue. The major issue is, do countries believe that this is a weapon which cannot be used against others, because then somebody will use it against us. And therefore, the only path towards a future for humanity is to get rid of these nuclear weapons. And that's really the task of the science movement, because as I said, it was really the science movement and what was called the social responsibility of the scientists This was what was propagated post the Second World War, after the scientific community has contributed for building the bomb. One part of their prashchitta, so to say, was to decide that they will fight the nuclear bomb and they will try and stop development of the nuclear program, and they will work for nuclear disarmament. I'm not going into that in more detail today because all of you would have some idea about this. We had created in the one of the science jathas we had done, we had also created a booklet which went in details about the nuclear bomb, what had happened. I think we called it Darker Than a Thousand Suns. It was a play on what was Oppenheimer's Brighter Than a Thousand Suns, which is what he said when the nuclear explosion took place in the desert. And that was his statement at that time. So we had a play on that of the words. And this is what we had done at that during one of the jathas we had done, in which we had gone into details about what the nuclear weapons are, how many are there. Of course, we have many more now. There are many more nations which have nuclear capability today, North Korea being one of them. Iran is almost a nuclear power today, as we know, partly because Israel is an undeclared nuclear power backed by the United States and other countries, other European countries. And therefore, Iran wanted to develop at least the capability of building a nuclear weapon. Otherwise, they're always prone to being blackmailed by Israel. I'm not getting again into the details of all of this. I leave this for you to decide or learn of it by yourself. But I'm going to speak on what is it that science movement can do. And I would argue the science movement, I think Sharmaji has also talked about this, it has two tasks before it. And this is something which is really core to what we have believed in. One is that we believe that it is possible to make people behave rationally. We believe rationality, understanding nature, which is what rationality gives you, is something fundamental to humanity. And that's what distinguishes us from other animals. We have the ability to understand our environment. We have the ability to develop knowledge in a way that we can build on knowledge. Each generation builds on knowledge of the other generation. And that is something which is fundamental to humanity. The second part of it is that if we as scientists, and this is the science movement, though I'm an engineer, not a scientist, but we club scientists and engineers together. That's how people see us. So the scientific response, what is the responsibility of the scientist or the engineer? By the way, nuclear bomb also requires a lot of engineering. So it's not that only the scientists, poor fellows, they are to be blamed for the nuclear bomb. It's also the engineers who actually make the trigger, make the purification possible, concentrating the uranium. All of this is, again, a part of the engineering work. And as you know, we also have plutonium reactors where we make plutonium as a byproduct. And also that, of course, is also a part of nuclear power plants. Getting back to the topic that I wanted to focus on, that once we accept that we, as a scientific community, have a social responsibility. This was the famous Szilard, Einstein, Russell manifesto. The social responsibility of the scientist, what is it? Now, you can say that I'm a scientist, I'm an engineer, I don't have any social responsibility. I only make my salary and I don't have any responsibility beyond that. The question is, if you are developing technology which can end civilization, which can end what your children will inherit, not as property, but as a working nature. In that case, you cannot take this position, that you have to then accept that it is your responsibility as well, that if you develop science, you develop technology, it's your responsibility also to fight for what end they should be used. That the use of science and technology is an ethical responsibility you have, that if they're not used for the common good, but only for the greed of capital and not for needs of people, quoting Gandhi. So if you are going to look at that, then that is where my departure lies, that we as a scientific community, we as a part of a science movement, we always have to bring to the people the issue that while science and technology has created this enormous possibility for good, for development of society, for a clean environment, it has also simultaneously created possibilities that this will not happen, but the opposite. How does it happen? You have, for example, polluting industries which decide that in order to make more money, more profits, we can sacrifice the public health issues. We can pollute the water, we can release pollutants in the air, and it doesn't matter because we are here only to make profits. So that is one part. The other responsibility is, of course, to tell the people the danger of what today advanced tools can do. We now talk about AI frequently. It's also our task to say that what happens if AI becomes rogue? What can a rogue AI do? And the problem is that as increasingly AI is being integrated into war, what it can do is very dangerous. For example, I'm not going too far. Sharmaji has talked about it. When you see what's happening in Palestine, you will realize that a part of the bombing, targeted killings, etc., is being done using AI. AI has been given certain objectives and it is fulfilling those objectives. So in fact, a lot of the missile attacks which took place in Gaza before Israel entered Gaza was using AI, finding out where the people are, where do they live, and attacking those places at night. There was again, a very well-known author, public figure. She wrote about this, and not surprisingly, she was killed by a targeted missile strike. So these are all, right now as we talk, these are happening. And these are happening because somebody feels that they really have no responsibility. They have just made the AI. What it does is not their headache. But here again, the issue is that we as technologists, as scientists, also have social responsibility to see what the artifacts we build, the things that we build, are used for public good, not for public harm. And if we can't stop it, it's also our responsibility to bring it to public eye and also propagate this, that these are inhuman instruments and they cannot be used like this. Of course, the nuclear movement once upon a time was very powerful. Now it has weakened because people, having lived with the nuclear bomb for so long, have got used to it. But the point is, with the increasing number of nuclear powers, nuclear trigger can be quite close. And if you have a person like Mr. Trump, who believes that he can threaten others and others will back off, even if they're nuclear powers. And as I said, I was just giving the example that Mr. Trump has sent nuclear armed submarines to Russian coast. And the clear indication, therefore, to Russia is that we can launch nuclear weapons against you. Now, Russia is also a nuclear power. Russia has nuclear submarines. Russia has what are called hypersonic missiles, nuclear-armed hypersonic missiles. Why would you do that? The argument for Mr. Trump is, and I think that's where Trump is somebody of a kind we have not seen before, except perhaps for Nixon, who also exhibited some of these characteristics, that he believes that if he threatens and he ups the ante, continuously ups the ante, you respond, I'll respond even more. Then people will think that is a madman. So let's back off. We don't want to get into an entanglement with them. So I think Trump has, whether it is negotiations with India on the question of the trade, or it is the question of nuclear war, or it's a question of any war, he believes that he can dictate because he can behave more irrationally than others, and people therefore will back off. Now, this principle, the madman theory, is what Nixon also had. And in fact, this is something which was used in the negotiations. For example, in Vietnam, where the negotiator said, he's a madman. So you better settle for what we are saying. Otherwise, things may go even worse. But the fact is, the world will not listen or will not be blackmailed forever. And Trump needs to make one mistake for us to face again a nuclear Armageddon, because any nuclear weapons unleashed on any nuclear power, of course, will have a response. And if it has a response, then going up the nuclear ladder will lead to only destruction of the civilization as we know it, because as has been modeled again, that any nuclear exchange will see huge dust clouds in the atmosphere, which will lead to a destruction of our environment as we know it, and it will cause billions and billions of people to die. Civilization as we know it will not be sustained under such conditions, and we will see, therefore, the destruction of civilization, the destruction of society under such conditions. So this is an unfortunate moment of history where, how many years? 80 years after the nuclear bomb being exploded in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, we are still discussing the nuclear threat to our civilization, that we have not been able, as a civilized society should, to do away with nuclear weapons altogether. Instead, we are still becoming nuclear. New nuclear nations are coming into being, and we still have the sword of Damocles hanging over our heads, collective heads, by which one madman can destroy the world, the way that Mr. Trump is threatening to do. So I will end here, and then we can have further discussions, and maybe I can respond to some of the questions.
Thank you, Prabir. Am I audible?
Yes.
Okay. So thank you to both Dr. Sharma and Mr. Purakastu for their very insightful perceptions on this very relevant topic. We will now be ready to take questions from the audience. So we have heard both their perspectives, and it's very interesting that, both of them, of course, have one common theme, that, the nuclear bomb is a threat to humanity, to the world at large, but then they bring in very different perspectives too from their own, their own life and learning, which is why it's good to have speakers from very different backgrounds speaking on the same theme. So we are open for discussion. I see here that there is one question, or rather a request to share the link where you can find drawings of children who have been affected by the nuclear bomb. As Prabhupada mentioned, that children who have seen Hiroshima and Nagasaki were drawing, painting images, and these were very disturbing. So somebody has asked whether a link can be shared. I don't see any questions in the chat right now, but if anyone would like to ask a question, please raise your hand and I will take it from there. So any of the participants here on Zoom, if you have a question, you can please raise your hand. And if there are any questions in Facebook Live, then they have to be passed on here. Okay. So let me begin.
Put your questions in chat box also.
Yes, you can put your questions in the chat box also, which I don't see again right now.
Hello. Hello.
Yes.
So my question is that nowadays the war is being threatened by hitting the nuclear installations like nuclear power stations and etc. Shall we control this type of hitting the nuclear installations, because it was aimed at Iran. They are telling that we attacked the Iran nuclear installations. And also Russia started telling that it will attack. News is there. It has attacked the nuclear power stations in Ukraine. So such type of war is very dangerous. This will also harm the whole nature and the people, I think.
Yes. So who would like to answer that question? Dr. Sharma, would you want to go first?
Yeah, I can.
Yeah.
See, what happens is, as Prabir has pointed out, the position in Iran is not very clear. They have an enrichment plant, but they seem to have stored a lot of plutonium underground. Now, when the United States jets came and bombed, the US said we have destroyed the nuclear installations. But subsequently, the International Atomic Energy Agency said we do not find much of radiation effect there. And it looks as though that the initial version of the United States is not correct. Now, what happens is, naturally, Israel and United States are anxious to hit the nuclear installations, mainly the enrichment plant, because unless you enrich uranium, plutonium to that particular richness, that will not be fit for making a bomb. We don't know whether Iran has got the capacity, but they're about to make a bomb. That is the whole idea. Now, yes, in fact, what will happen in a war between two countries having nuclear weapons is, or one country not having nuclear weapons, but other country having nuclear weapons, is to aim at nuclear installations, enrichment facilities, and all that. You know, Iran, very interestingly, they killed a scientist. They pinpointed a scientist. They took, the Google positioning thing, and they killed a scientist. That means even in Iran, it happened. A few important generals, scientists, they were also targeted. Now, this is something which is very ugly. See, a war of this kind, anytime, any country can commit a mistake. And one mistake in nuclear war means destruction over a very large area. So this is something which really worries all of us. And that's why we should say, really, don't you see, in the recent times, Iran had a nuclear deal. They said we are going out of it. We are not going to be a part of that. Russia and United States has a nuclear deal. Putin said, no, we are withdrawing from that. See, you are succeeding in, closing all options of negotiation and all that. See, unless there is a negotiation before you do anything drastic. So, in my view, dialogue is being replaced by this madness. You think you are chest thumping and, cyber rattling kind of thing, which may not really be good in a nuclear world. See, ordinary weapons are all right, but in a nuclear war, it can be extremely dangerous. And today, hypersonic war and all that, it's a few microseconds. You have to take decisions within microseconds. That's why artificial intelligence came in. And artificial intelligence, nobody knows. It just reads the pattern and it then decides.
Let me also add just a few sentences to what Dr. Sharma has said, that nuclear weapons, of course, are not only dangerous, but also when you store fissile material, which you have to, that's also equally dangerous. If somebody blows it up, then of course you won't get a nuclear blast, but you will get radioactive fallout in a large area. The difference between what the plutonium bomb and the uranium bomb, just a pedantic difference, is the plutonium normally comes out of a nuclear reactor. The uranium can be done more cheaply, relatively, because you're doing it only for concentrating the uranium. Therefore, you do it in centrifuges. And because it doesn't need a huge infrastructure, therefore you can build it underground, which is what the Iranians had done. They built it deep underground, and they have claimed that the Fordo plant has not been that damaged, and they can restart easily. More than that, they had a certain amount of plutonium which already they had concentrated up to 60%, 70% level, and that's between 60% to 90%, the number of cycles that you have to do in a centrifuge are not that large. To go from 5% to 20% is much more number of cycles that you have to do. But if you want to go from 60 to 90%, and you can go to the internet and search and you will find those details, it's not a very huge leap. In fact, it's a much smaller leap to do that than go from 10%, 5% to 20%, 30%, and so on. So yes, Iran has the ability to make the bomb. It's very clear. It had, I think, 400 kg of 60% uranium, and that they can do up to, what I read, up to about 9 to 10 bombs. So that is the capability they have. And given Israel's size, 1 or 2 bombs will make it dysfunctional. For, of course, number of bombs that Israel has is much more, so they can also make Iran equally inhabitable. The interesting part, which Dr. Sharma talked about, that IAEA was meeting nuclear scientists in Iran. So they knew where they were, who they were. And it appears that information Israel was privy to, and they used that for the targeted assassinations, which is one of the reasons Iran is very unhappy with IAEA and has said that you have been acting as really the spies for Israel. Now, this is not the first time it has happened. Even in earlier programs, international bodies, the United States earlier had used it, for example, in Iraq. They did the inspections. And after the inspections, the information was passed on to the Americans, who they were, who the people were. In this particular case, of course, the nuclear scientists were targeted. And that's, again, something which is very, what shall I say, a new turn in the war, that they are not targeted as nuclear facilities. They're individually targeted, and they were killed at their homes, which means that they were part of a building in which a lot of other people were also there. They were killed there. And this is, again, not something new. Israel has been doing targeted assassination of Iranian scientists for quite some time, particularly nuclear scientists. But the point that happens is you cannot stop the development of science or the development of any of these things by taking out what you think are key figures, because the reality is that younger people take over, and it's not necessary they are less competent than the older people. So people like us who are old, we believe we know everything, but that's not really true. So therefore, all it does is to change the generation of scientists, and you get a new generation of scientists who are as competent as the earlier generation. So that is not likely to work. And what Dr. Sharma said is also absolutely true, that the very less radioactivity that was released would seem to show that the nuclear stockpile, what stock of uranium they had concentrated, that has not been released. So that was either removed earlier, dispersed, and so that it has not been touched, or if at all, it has been marginally touched. So yes, Iran has the ability to have nuclear bombs. That only at the moment, the only reason why they are not having it, because Ayatollah Khamenei has not given permission for them to build a nuclear weapon. Because according to him, and according to also other clerics, this is a weapon of mass destruction. It is haram. So therefore, they will not allow it to be done. But maybe, given the option of destruction of their country and letting go of some belief, they might still do it. So that's where we are at the moment on the question of the nuclear bomb, what has happened in Iran. And I'm going to stop here.
Can I just intervene? Can I just intervene?
Please.
Yeah.
Yes, please.
See, I just want to bring in a slightly different dimension to nuclear field. See, one is a bomb, which is highly destructive. The second is an accident, high intensity radiation. But there is also an equally dangerous thing, that is low intensity radiation. Because we somehow feel that low intensity radiation is not that dangerous. But in Telugu, we got a proverb: when you're sitting on a mat on the floor and water creeps under that, you will not know till it touches you. So like that, this is something which is very, very surreptitiously attacks. I'll give an example. I handled radioactive isotope, a short-lived isotope in Apsara reactor. You know how they irradiate and make it? It's a speck. It's a speck of a radioactive isotope, needle point, between two plastic laminates. And then we take it and then make observations on that. So that's how we handle. So in the Tata Institute of Fundamental Research, where I was doing as a scientist, every morning and every evening, there is what is known as a hot laboratory. They come with a Geiger counter and they measure, look for radioactive leaks or anywhere in the room. And in the evening, once again, and they do that every day religiously, because low intensity radiation can cause cancer because it will attack your genes, genetic changes. And it doesn't require high intensity radiation. I'll give an example. One of my friends, very good friends, is a nuclear scientist of repute. He was doing an experiment with a speck of a radioactive isotope, as I mentioned to you. Then he committed the mistake of smoking at the same time. Then when the hot lab guys came and with their Geiger counter, they were going around, they found a lot of radioactivity all over, spread on his clothes, on the equipment, everywhere. Then immediately he was quarantined. He was taken to hot lab. He was given purgatives. He was made to bathe several times. 3 or 4 days he was quarantined, because that type of radioactivity, even though it's low intensity, it can be dangerous. It can cause cancer. So that's why, handling radioactive material in a nuclear power station or an atomic facility is extremely dangerous. Even a speck can cause carcinogenic effects. It's a long-term effect. Carcinogenic means, it can also affect future generations, genes. So, that is something which worries. It's not just a huge bomb or an accident like Fukushima. When a nuclear power plant is set up, in the United States and in India also, there is a zoning system. Nuclear Power Corporation has got a zoning system. They zone it up to 30 kilometers in India, but in the United States, it's 50 miles, 80 kilometers. And up to 80 kilometers, they do radiation monitoring, as I call it. And that is something very, very important. So anything nuclear, it has got that low intensity radiation, carcinogenic effect, contamination possibility. Even from that point of view, it's much more damaging than other pollutants. So this is something which worries me. Thank you.
Thank you. In fact, I was going to ask you, both of you, that, of course, we are talking about the bomb and we are talking about the, nuclear bomb in particular. But then, in general, if you look at the world around us where the wars are being going on, you look at the situation in Gaza, you look at the situation in Russia, Ukraine, the amount of damage that we are doing to the climate, on the one hand, everybody is talking about the impact of climate change and what climate action we have to do. We are looking at the SDGs. But on the other hand, what kind of damage we are doing and how deep rooted widespread this damage is going to be for the world with all the blasts that are happening on a daily basis. I mean, even in our country, we just had so many drone attacks and so many drones being shot down, blah, blah, blah. Imagine the amount of damage we have done to the environment. And nobody really talks about it. Of course, the nuclear bomb is a huge threat, but it's a fact that while nobody is really using the bomb, they're using it to threaten each other. People are using drones, people are using bombs of other kinds, that are using missiles, aircrafts, and that is damaging the world. And we are probably edging towards a point of no return.
Let me interrupt on this for a moment. Just sorry, let me put off my phone. Yeah, let me interrupt for a moment over here. Fundamentally, we have to understand one thing. Drone attacks and little bombs, little blasts don't create global warming as much as essentially carbon emissions. So carbon emissions or greenhouse gases are the key problems when you come to global warming. So let's not think a war causes a lot of global warming. The problem that we have today is that Mr. Trump, for example, has said United States will not stop its coal, natural gas, and oil burning. It is going to do more of it, and it's going to sell more of it. And therefore, they do not believe, he doesn't believe that the greenhouse gases are real and a green transition is required. So that is a much bigger threat. I'm not saying wars are not dangerous. They are dangerous for a very different reason. Pakistan and India are nuclear powers. So if you do drone attacks, it can escalate to a nuclear attack. And that's the much bigger danger over there. But when it comes to global warming, and we cannot really tag it on to what we're discussing today, it needs a different discussion. The question is that, yes, we are entering a phase where global warming is obviously visible, it's real, and it is also true that we have the ability to stop global warming by changing the fuel energy policies we have. India is not doing too badly on that count. China has done a transition. Now they use more solar and wind. But the problem again is, and this is a much older problem that we have now, which is that we do not have the supply chain for building, say, solar panels. Why don't we have the supply chain? Because we have not invested in it. We believe that we can buy everything from wherever it is. We can make the panels, and that's enough for us. And Mr. Adani or Mr. Ambani will build the rest, and that's all we need. So we do not believe that we need to have the entire supply chain in the country. But as I said, this is really a topic for another day and not today.
I just wanted to add something. Can I?
Yeah, please.
Yeah. Yes, please.
No, it's very interesting. When you burn coal, there are emissions which warm up the planet, the atmosphere. But very interestingly, whether it is local Indian coal or imported coal, they all contain radioactive isotopes. See, coal contains uranium and thorium radioactive isotopes. So what happens is when you burn coal and produce electricity, for every ton, almost half of it in India is ash, fly ash. And they dump all the ash all over around power station. And the ash flies over. And I am close to about 2 power stations, so we keep on breathing it. Early morning, when you try to clear your nose or something, it is very dark. So people think it's all coal dust. But people don't realize that there are radioactive isotopes which can really affect them. So I tested this. I went to Vijayawada Thermal Power Station in Andhra Pradesh with my friend in Scientists for People, Dr. Babu Rao, and we took a Geiger counter. I was responsible for the Richard Power Station, Vijayawada Thermal Power Station, where I was at the electricity board in Andhra Pradesh. But then, as an outsider, I went there with a Geiger counter, and we went surreptitiously because they would tell us. We went surreptitiously into the ash pond site, and we measured radioactivity on Geiger counter, and we found the radioactivity levels were very high. So, not many people realize that what we think are ordinary pollutants which contain lead, heavy metals, arsenic, which are bad, which are dangerous, but they also contain radioactive isotopes. And there are research papers on this on Indian coal, imported coal. I've written several times. National Green Tribunal has taken cognizance of this. And they said every time there is a power station, you must also consult Atomic Energy Commission and then find out how much, what is the rate. But then the problem is they just don't want to do anything at all. They just only consult them and there's the end of it. And we keep on, inhaling all those heavy metals, mercury. Mercury is very dangerous. There is a mercury treaty, international treaty, Minamata treaty at the global level on mercury, not to use mercury for. So these are all dangers which are hidden. And we are all facing that, all of us are facing. So this is something very interesting.
Thank you. So do we have any other questions from the audience? Anyone who wants to speak? No?
I got one question.
Yes, please.
Or to all those who are listening to Prabir and I, question us. Question us. Question us. Thank you.
I think everyone is trying to process everything they heard until now. So are there any questions on Facebook? Whoever is maintaining Facebook Live?
No, there is no question still now in Facebook.
Okay.
One comment is there only.
No, somebody has put the link to the darkness
yes,
of the thousand
Krishna
suns here.
Mohan. It is Krishna Mohan. He raised a question: how to strengthen PSM campaign for nuclear disarmament?
Where is
Prabir.
I'm sorry, that will need another seminar. Basically, as a movement, we have to do what we have been doing anyway. How to make these things, how to popularize the threat of nuclear weapons, and how do you bring it to the people? That's a simple task, as already people have put on the chat here, that Darkness of a Thousand Signs is available at a particular link. That was our booklet on this issue. And it's also, somebody had asked also about the pictures, about what children had drawn. Today with in any case, you can just, that's also somebody has put, I think Raghu has put that link over there. But you can go to the internet and search this, and it's a very famous set of paintings which have been done by children of the victims of those who are victims of what they saw, and they're heartbreaking. And that's so we need to bring all of that. And yes, we need a campaign for this. We need a campaign addressing directly the question of nuclear weapons, and particularly because we are two nuclear weapons, three actually, who really don't have the best of relationship: India, Pakistan, and China. And therefore, it's much more important for us to also talk to each other, because, unlike Russia and the US, who are quite far apart, we live very close to our neighbors, much closer than they do. Of course, you can claim Russia and US are very close when it comes to Siberia, but that's really not true for the bulk of the population. So I think it's very important for us, therefore, to also think how we can bring peace between our two countries. And it cannot be done using what is called muscular politics, which seems to be what both sides are doing. But it needs a different breakthrough, and it needs a different attitude towards what our relationship should be with our neighbors. I'm going to stop here because, as I said, this would become otherwise another seminar.
No, I just wanted to say.
Yeah, I think Jaiprakash has a question. He put his hand up.
Sorry.
Yeah, Jaiprakash, you can unmute yourself and talk. We can't hear you, Jaiprakash.
Oh, you're not audible.
Perhaps you want to put the question in the chat.
Yeah.
JP, you're muted.
No, I think he's speaking, but I cannot hear properly.
Okay.
Muted. Yep.
What
Yeah,
is
he's
the
put the question, yeah.
He's asking what the solution is.
What is the solution? That is another story. So therefore, as I said, we'll need another seminar for that too. We've discussed what the peace movement can do or the anti-nuclear movement should do. But beyond that, it's really not on us to save the world. Unfortunately, we are not that powerful. It's all we can do is to bring the consciousness of all of this much more. And JP, you do a lot of it by writing. So that's what we all have to do.
Okay, here's a comment. Extending the quantum level phenomena to our day-to-day macroscopic scale has become very handy to obscuranists. The equated Ardhanarishwara to superposition of states and Lord Krishna being present simultaneously at all his wives to tunneling effect. Wow. Better we define a clear division between macroscopic manifestations to atomic scale phenomena. The probability of your money in my pocket cannot be a discussion of philosophical scale.
I think it's a good comment and we should let it go at that. It's not a question. And we completely agree. I completely agree with it.
Okay, do we have any other comments or questions? If not, then let me wrap up the session with thanking the two speakers. Okay, we have something here. Okay, please search for McCloy-Zorin Accords on General and Complete Disarmament of 20th September 1961. That's the comment from Jaiprakash.
Yes.
It was a pleasure being the host for the session. So thanks a lot to both our speakers. And we now will have Vivek Montero for the official vote of thanks. So I sign off and hand over to Vivek.
Thank you, Anindita. Can you hear me? Am I audible?
No.
Okay. So we have had a very, very interesting and a very intense exchange of thoughts and ideas and information on this very, very important subject, which has again come on the agenda for a number of reasons. I will not mention the reasons why it has come on the agenda. That has been already spoken by the speakers. I just wanted to point out to Dr. Sarma that this webinar is a part of our events leading up to the National Scientific Temper Day on the 20th of August. And 6th of August and 20th of August is separated by just 2 weeks. And the slogan of the NSTD, National Scientific Temper Day, which is also the anniversary of the martyrdom of Dr. Narendra Dabolkar, the slogan of NSTD is ask why, question. And therefore, the AIPSN, I think, has to be thanked for initiating this discussion on a very, very relevant and a very increasingly important subject. We, of course, we are very grateful to all the three speakers, the chair and Dr. Sarma and Pravir Purkayast, they're all experts, they're all very experienced, they've written articles and books on this subject, and we were privileged to have them here today and hear them speak on this subject. I would like to thank all the participants who attended this here in the Zoom meeting and also on Facebook, and point out that the concern that Dr. Sarma and Probir and many of the participants expressed here is, what do we do? Where do we go from here? How can we strengthen the movement to have complete disarmament, to ban nuclear weapons? Well, we do have a tool right now in these times. It was not there at the time when nuclear weapons were first introduced. And that is the tool of internet and the tool of, being able to communicate on a very wide scale, on not just a national, but an international scale through internet. On the one hand, we have a complete silence, a complete censorship of a discussion of this issue on the mainstream media. But there is this other media, the social media, which is in our hands. And it is up to us to take this issue and ensure that it receives the attention which is very much required today. In January 2025, the doomsday clock, which is a clock that was started in 1947 by the atomic scientists, the Bulletin of the Atomic Scientists. At that time, it was set to 7 minutes to midnight. And in between, since 1947, it has sometimes gone forward and sometimes gone back. But in January this year, it was set to just 89 seconds from midnight, showing the urgency about how much the danger of nuclear war and nuclear destruction has achieved because of various circumstances. So I think it's up to us, all of us, to ensure that we use whatever means are there at our disposal to broaden this discussion, involve more people in this discussion, and through this discussion to build up a movement for disarmament, both in our country and all over the world. So once again, on behalf of AIPSN, I thank the Scientific Temper Desk, Arunabaji, Professor Sarma, Probir Purkayast, and Anindita for a very, very interesting discussion today.